Welcome to this panel, Alternative Controllers and the New Arcade. My name is Mark Kleeb. This panel is about a class that I teach, and I want everyone here to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Matt Olson, a member of Team Wario Party. I believe we took the class in 2023.
My name's Mashi.
I'm Karina.
I'm Angela.
Oh, party foul!
Okay, you might have to come over. I'm gonna put this back.
Very taut. The mics are taut.
My name is Nico.
I'm Robert.
I'm Lamar.
All right, so I want to just talk a little bit of history here. So my background is I build arcade cabinets. This is the first cabinet I built back in 2010. This was at a venue called Death by Audio that used to exist in Brooklyn, New York. They had a wood shop and some old computers that were easy to install MAME software. So we made a really hard to play arcade cabinet where the buttons were too far apart. And then I met a group called Baby Castles that were making art games in New York at the time, and we collaborated on some games like Pole Riders and Hokra that eventually became the Sports Friends collection, and put those in cabinets. And it led to what would become Death by Audio Arcade, which was a collection of custom, independently made arcade cabinets. And shortly after we built 4 of them, Death by Audio closed. We became a nomadic group of arcades that were popping up around at places. This is at the Maker Faire, New York City in 2014. This is at the Elsewhere Skybridge Arcade. Elsewhere is a big venue in New York City. And we came to MAGFest. We started coming to MAGFest in 2015, and we eventually created the department called Indie Arcade. On the left is a photo from, I want to say 2016, and on the right is Sox, who's the current department head of MAGFest. We did a panel where we built an arcade cabinet here in the room, which was not a great idea. It was really fun. And that led to my wife and I starting Wonderville, which is a venue in Brooklyn, so we didn't have to move arcades around in a box truck anymore, and they can all live here. And so a lot of the games that live at Wonderville come to MAGFest, and you can play them at the Indie Arcade. Okay, never mind. I thought I was getting a signal. But I'm not talking about any of this. I want to talk about a class. Basically, my thesis advisor, I went to the ITP program at NYU, which is interactive technology, and it's telecommunications, but no one knows what that means. No one knows. And he was like, you should pitch this as a class. And I was mainly building arcade cabinets, so I kind of wanted to come up with a structure for how I would teach this to students. And so I pitched a syllabus, and it got accepted in 2015. And at the time, ITP was located in Manhattan, and it was much smaller. But they had a full wood shop, which was incredible. And there's another, game dev program, but the fact that there were a lot of people that were playing with physical hardware and building things out of wood made ITP kind of a more ideal place for this class. And so it was structured as 2 halves. It was a 14-week class. The first 7 weeks, we did intro to Unity game development. We used Arduino to interface with physical hardware, and we learned enclosure design with laser cutters and 3D printers. And then everyone makes a solo midterm, which is a game in Unity with a physical hardware controller. And just a little bit of background, the students that were taking this class came in with some Arduino knowledge. So I know this seems like a lot for the first half of a class, but they were kind of like using some knowledge that they came into the class with. We were starting at ground zero for Unity, so everyone was kind of making their first Unity project. This picture is the unfamiliar cat petting simulator, which is uses like capacitive touch inside the fur to control the cat. In the second 7 weeks, the students get into groups to build an arcade cabinet, and we do CAD design with Fusion 360, and we learn how to use the CNC machines that are at ITP. We also do, I like to call it analog woodworking, where we are like saws and drills and routers and things. And the final project is an arcade cabinet an arcade game in a custom arcade cabinet. Students will design and build this in 7 weeks. So it is kind of a crazy crunch for the second half of the class. And so what I like to do at the beginning of this class is do the history of the arcade. And so I have the students go to Barcade or go play emulators that sort of are the golden age of arcade games, Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Tempest, and write about all of these games and kind of like learn about how arcade game design works, because I think it's a little bit different than designing just any Unity game. You have to kind of know what the arcade games have, like fast restarts, high scores, all of this sort of things. And there's not a lot of footage of the midterms from this time period, but I found this supercut of videos from 2015 and 2016 of games that were built during that time. It's first of a few dildos that you'll see. So there it is again. So basically, around this time, it was sort of like the class was, you're building a game, and you're building a hardware controller for the game. And so we got a lot of what you see on the left, which is like a box with some buttons, or a box with a joystick. And sometimes we would get a dildo attached to a joystick. And so some of the cabinets that came out of this era, this is the first crop of arcade cabinets in 2015. Whaley Whaley, this was like kind of a rail racer that was, you played as a whale. Bear Hug, I don't have a lot of images from this, but there was a giant gummy bear at the top, and you looked down, and it was sort of like a Punch-Out style game where you were a gummy bear fighting other gummy bears. The group in the middle, Arcade, decided to put all 3 of their midterms into one cabinet, which was probably a smart idea because they had already built those games. So they built like a multi-cab for their 3 games. And Candy Mountain was this 4-player kind of top-down view where you were a robot kind of shooting candy at other robots. The following year, there was Stair Brawl. Stair Brawl was like a really quick competitive game where you were racing another player up a flight of stairs. They built a flight of stairs cabinet as well. Big Bang Bubble Boogie was a really complex rhythm game with a disco ball in it. This is the only photo I could find of it, but it was incredible. And Vinza, where you played using actual vines that were attached to kind of flexible controllers to do like a kind of a Pitfall inspired game. There was one more game from 2016 that actually did have a video that I would like to play. Yeah, this was before the more recent Kanye era. Funny enough, about a year after this, an actual web game called Kanye's Quest came out that like got all this press, and so if you try to search for Kanye's Quest, you're going to get that game. This cabinet, all of these cabinets do exist somewhere, but this was before Wonderville, so we would have like the showcase, and then they would go somewhere into the world. So after 2016, the ITP program actually moved. There was a new building being constructed in Brooklyn, and the plan was for the program to move there. So starting in 2017, they weren't ready to do a shop class, so I was postponing bringing the new arcade to the new facility until the shop was ready. And the shop was ready in the year 2020. So in January of 2020, I came ready with a brand new syllabus looking to teach the new arcade. And what I changed was a small thing, which was for the midterms, instead of doing a hardware controller for your Unity game, it became an alt control game. And this, we added this research where students would research the history of alt control at GDC, which is sort of like the big where alternative controllers are coming out of every year. And this is a huge aspect of MAGFest now, and a lot of the games that go to GDC also come to MAGFest. And so the plan was so that like you would have something a little more cohesive than just like a box with buttons in it that controlled what was happening in the game. So obviously in March of 2020, the class came to a pause. There was no cabinets, but we got a couple cool midterm projects. So I have a couple just to share with you. So this was a frying pan with an accelerometer attached to it. And I'm just going to skip ahead because it's a little long. This is one of my favorites. Lonnie used a microphone as an input for their midterm. This is very 2020.
Go, 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 go. Go! Go, 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 go! Go, 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 go! Go, 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 go,
So the ITP program was mostly hybrid in 2021, so I came back and I started teaching again in 2022. So between 2022 and 2025, the midterm projects were mostly kind of in the same vein of building some sort of alt control project. And you could see like these are plugged into a laptop. So the students are building some Unity game, and they're also building something that controls a Unity game. And some of these things, like in the top left, is joysticks that are just covered with knitted wool to kind of like match the theme of the game. In the bottom left was a silicone cast with like soft buttons. My class was running concurrently with a silicone casting class, which created some incredible work with students combining projects. In the middle is like a surfboard with these elastic bands that were also resistors, so you could sense how much they stretched. And the two controllers on the right were just like these really unique 3D printed or CNC'd custom controllers. There's also some GIFs. On the left, there was this sweeping game where it's just a mouse on the bottom of a broom, but it made like this really cool interaction. In the center, this student remembers when they were a child of throwing tissues out the window as they were driving. So they wanted to make a game where you had to pull tissues out of a box to accelerate the car. It's just a motion sensor. Like, you don't need the tissue box. You could just stick your hand out, but I kind of like that it was like you have to pull tissues out to drive this car. And then Stump, this is Matt's midterm project, which is based on that hammering nails into a stump game, but the digital version of it.
The drinking game, specifically.
Yes. Here's a couple more. This is the second dildo midterm that came out of this class. This time it's not a joystick, it's a stretch sensor. There's a lot of people that just want to do a dildo controller. This is an egg in the center that was filled with resin and attached to a joystick to fly an eagle around, and then a balance board game on the right. So every student makes a midterm in this class, and usually they're like a really kind of quick and dirty thing. This is a really fast 7-week project where you're learning Unity, but there are 2 projects that have gone on beyond the midterm and are now at MAGFest. So I kind of want to talk about these 2 games. First, Utter Mayhem by Karina Chow. So this was also a silicone cast set of udders that were used to play a rhythm game. And you would milk the cow as coffee cups came in time with the beat. And so here's a video of when it was presented at the midterm.
It's very hard.
So after the class ended, Karina, you made this cow cabinet, which is now downstairs at the Indie Arcade. Do you want to talk about your process?
Sure. Yeah, actually, when I was applying to grad school, your class, New Arcade, I saw it beforehand. It was one of the reasons why I applied to ITP at all. I have a background in computer science and human-computer interaction, and I just love weird inputs. And then I also got really into silicone for cosplay and for Burning Man art. So I was just, clearly my biggest weakness is hardware, but I really wanted to make something with silicone, and then for some reason, I can't explain why, I really wanted to make an udder. And then why have a normal cabinet where you can make it look like a cow if you already have an udder? But yeah, so I've made it into a little cabinet. This event has been great for stress testing. But it's been to Coney Island Maker Faire, and then I went to New Currents Media Festival in Santa Fe. And then the kids really loved it at both of those. But yeah, did not have the strength of the people here, so definitely need to work on it more. But yeah, it's been really fun.
I think the udders are not currently working right now.
Yeah, they're not currently working. We've been trying to go back and try all these different things for this event. But yeah, it's great because we have a lot of new ideas of how to fix it up. So
we do have a video from, I think this is Santa Fe, of someone actually playing it.
Yeah, at the Santa Fe event, there was this one kid who was now my #1 fan, and he came back 3 days in a row and begged his parents to come back to play it. And then the third day we weren't there, and then the mom got the contact info of the event organizer to send me a video of him crying that it wasn't there. And then he also made fan art with pink crayons, and I can't really tell where the cow is or what's going on in the fan art. It was really cute.
So the second midterm project was by Angela Juarez, and it's Guacamole. And this was in spring of 2025. And this is what it was for the midterm. And so that became this in August. Mm-hmm. And you collaborated with Four Friends Studio. Mm-hmm. Do y'all want to talk about how you went from one paper slicer to this cabinet?
Yeah, so at work I use a paper cutter a lot. And with the assignment of the alt control, I thought, why not just blend everything together? So the paper cutter was a big inspiration. And it was just a midterm, which is a solo project. For the final, I did something else with a different group. And then I recruited my friends to create 4 friends here. I have Nico, Robert, and Lamar to really help bring this concept to life and evolve it into the version it is now. Nico is great at systems and game design, and so kind of enhanced the whole narrative and the arc of the game. Robert did the music, so good, and Lamar did all of the new art. I don't know if you remember from the prototype, it was just like Google Images, just as filler. But yeah, I feel like it really has its own identity now, and instead of 2 other buttons on the paper cutter, one of the other controllers is a tape dispenser. And then we have a little D-pad now because you've got to juggle your job and your side hustle at the same time. I feel a lot of us tried to do. And yeah.
So this is a video of the Alt Control Fest at Wonderville in 2019.
Stand up.
It's not blocks. So good. Push forward. Yep. There you go. It's a blade. It's not part of the dog. It's got to push forward. Your boss is here. I shop back in there, so I can do woodworking and get the dust in there and not make it
No matter how hard you work at work, if you meet your bare minimum, you'll never make more money for working hard. That's so smart. That's like
So now I want to talk about the cabinets. And so these are the cabinets that were built starting in 2022 with the new facilities at ITP. One thing that changed is the CNC machines, for some reason, got smaller, even though the rest of the space got bigger, which meant that we were discouraged from building full-size arcade cabinets, which I think is very smart. We're in New York City, and people don't know what to do with giant arcade cabinets afterward. So you'll see a lot of kind of table cabinets and like bar top cabinets. So in 2022, there were 5 games. In the top left is handling. This was actually a hands-free. You can notice there's no controls on it. This was using, I believe, an Xbox Kinect. But he was using hands to sort boxes in an Amazon warehouse and put them into a truck. In the bottom left is Walk the Line. This was a dual trackball cabinet where you were racing, but you were drunk, so you couldn't walk in a straight line, and so you had to use the trackball to kind of like stay on the path as you walked, and there were cars coming that you had to dodge. In the center is Bite Ball. And Bite Ball is a vaporwave hot potato game where you're passing a ball around and you can't hold on to it when the timer runs out. This actually lived at Wonderville for a long time and was moved back to NYU and is still, I believe, on display. So this is maybe one of the longest running public cabinets that came out of this class. Dumpling House in the top right. This was kind of a top-down, like competitive maze game where you were collecting items before the other person can get them all. And Shoots and Splatters in the bottom right. Sort of reminds me of like a Mario Party game where you were trying to stay on this like surface while you were trying to bump the other players off. Also, this was a 3-sided cabinet. They wanted to like push it up against the wall, which I think was a unique design I've not seen before. Even though the CNC machines were smaller, there was a handheld CNC called the Shaper Origin that we had access to. And I didn't teach it as part of my class, but both the Bite Ball and Shoots and Splatters team learned how to use it so they could cut their cabinet out of a bigger sheet of plywood than they could on the other machines. This was the 2023 selection of cabinets. On the left was Space Audition. This was a 2-player rhythm game on an arcade cabinet. It also had like this really cool lever controller that you can't quite see in this GIF. In the middle is Bacon versus Broccoli. The art in this game was incredible, but there doesn't seem to be any documentation other than this one photo. But you were kind of throwing knives in the air to attack vegetables as they rained down on you.
Vegetables and meat.
Vegetables and meat. Cosmic Courier, Karina, this was your final project. It was a pirate ship, and there were a lot of custom printed and fabricated controls. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about how that went.
Oh, yeah. That one was also like a 3-sided cabinet. That was like, yeah, like a steampunk pirate ship. One person's the captain and has like, the captain's wheel, and then 2 people are cannoneers. And it was kind of like, every level is generated, kind of roguelike-esque. And one person's like the captain trying to drive to a point, and the cannoneers are just trying to fight off enemies so you can get to that point and go to the next level.
And last but not least is Oshigoko. Matt and Mashi, you were the 2 of the 4 developers on this game. Let's watch some gameplay footage. This is a 1v1 cat and mouse top-down game. People are sitting on opposite sides of the arcade cabinet, hence the upside down text. yesterday. There's an Oshigoko tournament down in the Indie Arcade, and I'll just play some footage from that as well.
Oh my god, match point. Either one. Next point wins it. And Blake has 2 shots with the telephoto lens left. It could be all over in a moment. Oh. Don't let this opportunity slip, either of you. Play aggressive. Oh my god!
Yeah, so you guys want to talk about it?
Yeah, so I guess to start, that was the first year where you had decided when it was the cabinet stage to just randomly assign groups, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so Mashi and I, along with Kitty and Kai, our teammates, we had never worked on, we hadn't happened to be in classes together before having worked on anything else, so it was like completely from zero collaboration. And we had all gone pretty, like, if you saw what Mashi did for his midterm, you'd be like, what, how is that even possible in 7 weeks? And we were all kind of like, despite having loved what we were doing with the alt control stuff, we were very mercenary from the start about like, let's be realistic here. We've got 7 weeks. What do we feel most comfortable with doing in terms of paring this back to something like pretty simple, and then trusting that if we all just worked on what we were interested in and came, like, basically just brainstormed until we were happy with the next stage of like locking in a design decision, that we would like hopefully get something we at least didn't hate by the end of it. And so like, I ended up being sort of the lead fabricator of the group. Machi ended up being the lead programmer. And so it ended up becoming this 1v1 cocktail style cabinet, in large part because I was like, hey guys, so like my favorite, arcade cabinet growing up, like the first one I remember seeing at a Godfather's Pizza outside of Seattle, Washington, was a Miss Pac-Man cabinet, like the one that they have here in the museum section next to the land hall. What if we made a cabinet that looked like that? And everyone was like, that sounds pretty cool. And so our cabinet is like almost the exact same dimensions, but with the player positions flipped from a Miss Pac-Man. And like a bunch of decisions came sort of tumbling out of this like almost like yes-anding process. And like Mark said, we were like working with the idea of cat and mouse and like trying to come up with like, well, we don't want it to be a literal cat and mouse. We want to have some other kind of theming. And so we had started to talk about like celebrity versus paparazzi. And I think Mashi, you should take it, because like you came like just in the next day and like had the whole pitch for the rest of the game basically fully formed in your head.
Well, one of our members, Kitty, so she's very much into Japanese underground idol culture. We started with this idea of celebrity paparazzi, and then she actually was the one to bring up the point, well, this kind of makes me think of, crazy fans and idols in Japan. And from there, we really got, from there, the ball started rolling. Like, we were thinking, like, okay, like, let's kind of give it this, like, Tokyo-esque vibe. The title of the game, Oshigoko, is actually a pun on 2 things. Onigoko is what is used to describe the game tag in Japanese, and then Oshi is the what you might call someone whom you're standing. So combining those two, like, we really were able to develop this concept further. And as Matt was saying, like, we were all kind of burnt out from thinking big brain ideas for our midterms. So we wanted to focus on this constraint of a two-player, 2D, top-down cat and mouse type of game. But by keeping it as simple as it was, at least from the start, we were able to iterate and try out new things. The traffic that you saw there wasn't there in the beginning. And one day I was like, wait a second, like, what if we had more obstacles in this? And I think that ended up making a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think started in your year was, as soon as the groups were assigned, the rest of the class was dedicated to brainstorming, so that you could just kind of like get together and just spitball ideas like right when you form the group. And I think that was super helpful. And now NYU has actually pushed spring break back to after that class. So now the students actually get like a full other week of like developing the concept before they actually start building. But yeah, it's like a super short amount of time to build a project like this. And I think by the time we show the games, they're like just as complete as they could possibly be. But y'all worked on it for like another year before it came out to Wonderville.
Yeah, so I mean, it was at your place for like a solid year while we finished up the program. It's a 2-year grad program, and we had taken it both in the first year, and it was that was my first time using a CNC and building anything like that. So for my part, outside of being proud of like the game, which I didn't touch much of the art or programming for at all, but like the box survived the first couple showings of it, so I was like, that's pretty cool. And people seemed to like the game, so we were trying to think of like obviously, Mark, you like being one of the co-founders of Wonderville, you were like, yeah, maybe Yoshigoko should come here. But then Kitty, moved back to China after the program, and we were trying to think like, okay, what realistically needs to happen for this to like eventually end up at a place like Wonderville, and for us to not be like constantly worried about it. And I had already been going to MAGFest for a few years, even before going to the grad program. I think that's more or less how I first met you. And so, large part of the indie space now is Death by Audio Arcade became Arcade Commons. And so we started talking to Arcade Commons in part selfishly because we were just like, Mashi and I were like the two people who were like, of the four of us, like still like, all right, we're gonna put in the extra elbow grease to make sure this thing can go out and live in the world. But we were also like, imagine like one of us gets hit by a bus or like moves away from New York. Like who's like, do we want the sole responsibility for this cabinet to fall to one of us or to like you or something? So we ended up working with Arcade Commons to be one of the first like outside of the group cabinets that was sort of then like brought in. And that was super helpful because, if you talk to any of these people who've worked on either games with Mark or games independently with Arcade Commons, like they're all super helpful and super knowledgeable. So we got to take it out a few times, including MAGFest last year, and get a bunch of valuable feedback, not just from players, but from like the kinds of people who make the indie arcade happen here, which is great because like it's one thing to have a box that's sturdy and a game that's fun. It's another to be like, how do we got this really cheapo mini PC. How do we make sure that you can just plug this thing into the wall and it starts? And like all those sorts of questions that are the difference between like you can take this to like a one-off showing versus, as it has been since I think March of last year, just running every day at your bar and knock on wood, no issues. Like that is what really took us the year of extra iteration. The game itself like didn't change terribly much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I think there's a big jump between I finished a school project and I have an arcade cabinet that can feasibly live in the world, right?
Yeah, I will say like the game itself didn't change much. At one point, like I noticed last year at MAGFest, there was one player with just probably like twice the size of my hand, and it's a 1 joystick and 2 button game per player. And this person was just playing with one hand, maneuvering the joystick, and then like using their ring and pinky fingers to hit the buttons because it was too cramped in there. And I was like, all right, like note received. We're gonna carve out the control deck wider and then like sink it down a few inches and make it better for people with big hands. And we did that, and it seems to be going well.
Well, I guess one thing I wanna add about the development of the game. I guess was it 2023 where Unity did its runtime thing? So that was a very slightly traumatic moment for me because I was spending this much time learning Unity and I didn't really know that many other game engines. Like what would happen if Unity didn't roll it back and it became something that was just unsustainable for me to use. So I started looking into open source alternatives, free alternatives, and the version that's now living in the cabinet was made in a engine called Defold. It uses Lua. It's very lightweight. Had all the things that I needed, but it was also like an interesting challenge. to basically go from this one pipeline that I was so used to adapting it to an entirely different one.
Yeah, the game didn't change much, but you did basically port it.
So I just want to talk about the last 2 years of cabinets. So in 2024, there's a crop of cabinets, and I feel like the fabrication gets better and better. NYU let us start using their vinyl printer, so now the students can print adhesive side art for free just at the university, which I think upped the quality of everything. On the left is the omakase. This is like a color-coded conveyor belt sushi game where you had to kind of press the button that corresponded to your character. In the center is rice. This was a game where you use chopsticks attached to a rotary encoder to eat rice while simultaneously feeding food to the dog by moving the bowl. And then Hunt, which was, for the second year in a row, an asymmetrical 1v1 tabletop game where you were a ghost and a ghost hunter, and there were different power-ups that did different things, and you kind of walked around the map and tried to either hunt or evade the other player. The fourth game is Gemsy Frenzy, and I'll just play a video to show you what this game was about.
Yeah.
So they kind of were telling people this was a 2 or 4 player game since there's so many controls that you can kind of split responsibilities between 2 people. And if you came to MAGFest last year, 3 out of those 4 games were here. Rice and Gemsy Frenzy and Hunt were all at MAGFest last year. I think Rice didn't make it. It broke almost immediately. And, you know, these things tend to happen. You're running for 72 hours straight, and people are really, you know, pulling on things pretty hard. And then both Gemsy Frenzy and Rice went to Alt Control at GDC. And both cabinets had to be completely disassembled and flat packed and shipped to San Francisco and then rebuilt on site. Which was a lot of work for the developers, but Rice actually got a viral video out of it. You may have seen
Here's
this
an arcade
on
game
IGN.
where you have to finish your dinner without pissing off your parents. It's called Rice, and you can consume your food by using the chopsticks with a special mechanism meant to mimic the act of scooping rice out of a bowl, or you can tilt your bowl forward to offload more food to your little white dog. Just don't do it when your parents are looking at you. You'll also have to accept some veggies when your parents offer them to you. Definitely give those to the dog too. Refuse too many veggies or get caught feeding the dog too many times and it's game over. This is just one of many fun projects we saw at this year's GDC, but if you want to play Rice in person, it's currently playable at Wonderville in Brooklyn. Check it out.
Yay!
So, not to be outdone, Omakase did end up with a residency at Sushi Delic, which was a pop-up in Soho. And Masha, you actually worked with them as well.
So you want to play the video? Yeah. So Sushi Delic is basically a concept restaurant that was the collaboration between Audio Technica and Asobi Systems, which is a like a group that represents a few idols, and they were doing this art, food, tech pop-up at one point, and having played this at one of the ITP events, I was like, wait, this is like totally in theme. Sushi Delic itself also had a conveyor belt sushi thing that fit perfectly with what this game was playing with. So we had it on site for a few days, and people really enjoyed playing it.
Amazing. So last but not least, this was the spring 2025 crop of arcade cabinets. In the top left is Card Joust. This was a 2-player game. They actually built 2 back-to-back cabinets. And you had a steering wheel and a gas pedal to drive the car, and a pinball spring launcher to joust a spear at the other car as you drove past. In the middle is Need for Seat. This was sort of a Bennett Foddy Quap-inspired game with each player had 4 slide potentiometers, sort of like a volume fader on a mixer, and each one controlled a chair leg, and you had to climb to the center of the screen by like moving the 4 legs. In the top right is Sender. This is an isometric driving game. Angela, you worked on this. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
I mean, I did the fabrication for it, and yeah, that's kind of all I did for that. I have nothing else to really say.
This was like deliveries, and you can't see it in this photo, but there was like a crank on the side where you could select which package to deliver as you passed different houses.
Very reminiscent of Paperboy, and I miss it. I liked playing it a lot.
The bottom right is Pandora. And this was a 2-player game where one person was looking at the screen and the other person on the other side had a combination lock, and what that person had to tell them how to solve the puzzle. And the only way you could see the puzzle is by holding down buttons on 2 sides of the box. So you were kind of like hugging the box as you played it. It was a really unique style, and I think one of the only games that was built in sort of this format, which was not like a traditional arcade cabinet. And last but not least is Spin and Splash. This is the 4th game out of New Arcade that is downstairs at the Indie Arcade. If you haven't played it, it uses a rotary encoder and a giant gear to spin what is a washing machine and try and match clothes together. Nikki is here at MAGFest somewhere, but not at this panel. So if you run into her, you can ask her about how they made this cabinet. So that's it. That's 10 years of New Arcade. We have an Instagram and a Blue Sky. If you feel like following us, I will begin teaching the Spring 2026 class in about a week and a half. So there will be more crazy projects and cabinets coming out of the class. I think we have some time if anybody has questions. There's like a microphone over there.
I don't know if that's hooked in.
I don't know. Test it out.
Is it wireless?
Oh. Hello.
It's wireless.
I was wondering, a lot of older arcade cabinets are really durable because they're like lower tech. I'm wondering, you mentioned a game running all day, every day at your bar for like a year. I'm wondering how you're doing that with like modern laptops and stuff, like how you're designing them for durability.
So out of this class, I think most students are just putting their personal laptop in the cabinet for like the showcase. But then when you guys did Oshigoko, you got a mini PC And they go from like $150 to maybe like $500, depending on how beefy you need them. But they're super durable. They're all solid state. Like you could Velcro it to the side of the cabinet, and it's like gonna be there forever. So most of the arcades, especially in the Indie Arcade, are all like an LCD screen and a mini PC, and mostly empty inside.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You inspired me to already start a project. And the Amazon order has been placed.
Amazing. Hell yeah.
Hey y'all, thank you so much. I just had a quick question, I guess, about hardware. Setting aside, I have very limited skills in hardware. Setting aside like woodworking as an entirely different problem, how do you guys suggest approaching just tying everything together? Like, are there open source blueprints somewhere? Like, how do you figure out how to wire a paper cutter to, I don't know, an Arduino or something like that, let alone everything else involved? Thank you.
Yeah, so specifically for the paper cutter, I took it all apart to see where I could stash wires and install copper plates to create the contact for, it's essentially a button press. So like 1, 0 when the paper cutter hits the thing down, and yeah, it's a lot of drilling holes and things, and channels for wires, and my limited Arduino knowledge. You know, once you get everything on, like, once it all works on a breadboard, then it's good. You feel good, and then you get it, you solder it all on like a proto board, and if it works again, you feel even better, and then it's just a matter of like, all right, so how do I just like hide this stuff? And I think it really depends on, for the paper cutter, I mean, it's something that's already built, so I can't really design for my Arduino. I have to kind of go backwards. And so like I said, I kind of took it apart and just figured out, okay, I can drill a hole in here, feed some wire, and then I could put this piece back, and then you don't see anything. It's a lot of zip ties and double-sided tape, and yeah, I guess that's kind of how I approach it. And then just making sure that cable management, I think, is a really big, important part of this whole thing too, because there can be so many wires to keep track of, and having a good label maker is also, I think, pretty good thing to have. But that's my process. So yeah.
There was like an all control panel yesterday, and somebody said, get a makey. And I think this is like, there it is again. Thanks for showing it again.
Oh, there it is.
So if you don't, like, we use Arduino because we're learning like code and all of that, but if you just want to be like, I want lemons to press the space bar, you could just like alligator clip them to that thing, and you don't have to code at all. And I think that's like, I want to make an alt controller like tomorrow. You could get one of those and start making them.
I also wanted to say, like, if you're starting from like ground zero, I think some of the like most fun things that come out of alt control stuff is simpler than you think. So for instance, like one of the main parts of Rice, that bowl that's tilting, that's just a bowl that they drilled a hole in and then attached to a conventional arcade joystick. So that alone transforms it so much from being conventional arcade hardware, which then like there's lots of documentation you can find available online to like get started with for like complete beginners, to something that like immediately gives a player a different impression and makes them approach it differently. And so if like you find the electronic stuff too intimidating, or like you have limited time, I would also recommend just like start with a button or a joystick and see what else you can do with it. There's another game I want to shout out from the Night City folks down in the Indie Arcade. I forget the name of it, but it's a climbing game where you're controlling each limb of a climber with, yeah, it's so good. And it's just 4 joysticks. But like what other game is going to have 4 conventionally done joysticks controlling a character in a weird way? So like alt control doesn't need to be this bespoke thing, especially if you're just getting into it. You're going to learn a lot just from being like, how do I get up, down, left, right going?
Yeah, I was going to say also, like, just learning some of the basic sensors, like just a button. There's so much you can do with a button. Like for us, like my team over here, Kevin and Jess, like we were up in the hotel, like trying to fix the udder, and originally like the inside of the teat that we started with was like a button where it's like got 2 conductive plates in it, and then we switch the button to go to the top. So we're still using the concept of a button, but just like in different places and configuring it differently. So I think you can start with like the most basic building blocks and just figuring out how to use it in a creative way.
Yeah.
Please come to PAX East.
You're closer than GDC.
Get ReadPop to pay for it.
Yo, so I came here thinking I was gonna learn about like indie arcade stuff, but secretly you gave me a lot of inspiration for my job as a teacher. So now I want to ask, like, when I think about this, like, it's an awesome idea, and like we have a lot of that equipment at my institution, which is cool. But so I'm gathering that this is a grad class. Is that right?
Yeah, it's grad school.
Would you be terrified to teach it for undergrad?
So
this is maybe I should talk to you offline.
Here's a question for you. How many of you stayed up all night working on a project from this class? It is, I try to like say it on day one, I'm like, this is a crunch class. Like, this is a lot of work. And like, if you're also, I get a lot of first year students because the second year students are doing their thesis. And it's like kind of, if it's not your thesis, then it's gonna be like almost too much. And I think undergrads don't have the discipline, maybe. I don't want to overgeneralize, but like, you know, they're just starting school. And maybe there's like, instead of doing the cabinets, you could just do an alt control class that's the full semester and not get into like the woodworking. I think that's a little too much, maybe.
Sure. And then, so the other kind of part of the too much fear I have is like, it seems like, you know, there's this split between learning the game development and learning the fabrication stuff. So, and maybe your students could chime in on this. Like, do most people, what's the biggest struggle? And does it just depend on the students? And when you work on these group like projects, do you end up having like, oh, this is the person doing all the fabrication and this is the person doing all the game dev, and then is that problematic for you as an instructor? Like, oh, they're not getting all the learning objectives because they're not touching the power tools or whatever? I'll go sit down and you can answer. Thank you.
I'll just say briefly, like, yes, everyone has a role because it's like, it's too much work for everyone to do everything. But like when they learn the CNC machine, I have them all do it as a group. So it's like the first time they cut something, it's like, it doesn't matter what you cut. Like, cut something that you could mess up so that you could just learn the machine and do it as a group together. And then like, if the other group members are like, game development is my jam and I'm just gonna do that the rest of the project, that's fine. You have to divide the labor, you know?
I was gonna say also, like, this particular graduate program, everyone did like completely different undergrad degrees. So some people came in with like graphic design, software, like more like creative writing and all sorts of different things. So I think people, because of their previous experience, kind of naturally gravitated into roles, and that kind of helped create like different cohesive teams.
I'll also say that, like, I came in as a journalist, never touching a wood shop before, and now I operate CNC professionally. So, like, don't think that you need to have a certain skill set before doing it. But I would say, like, outside of the context of like a program and like a group of people supporting this kind of thing, it's separate from a class. If this is for anyone who's like, I'm inspired to do something, like, don't force yourself to do it in 7 weeks or even 14. Like, you could take some time and iterate and chill and not crunch.
Yeah, last thing I was going to say too is, like, you know, this was very crunch because, as you saw, it's like 2 7-week, like really intense things. I have a friend, Justin Darcy, he teaches an alt control class in like a university in SoCal. So he's kind of like takes that first 7 weeks and just stretches it out for an undergrad class. So I think it's possible to teach something like this, but yeah, maybe a little bit slower pace would be good.
I mean, you teach undergrads like music electronics too, and they seem to get that.
Yeah, and that's like a much lower, like their final is a breadboard project, right? So it's like a little more chill. I mean, I don't know that this program has the option to do a year-long class, you know, where it's like all these students take this class and then they do the next class, because you kind of have to, they go together. But if they offered that, I think it would be way better, obviously.
Yeah.
28 weeks.
Cool, thank you. I mean, my question's actually kind of a follow-up because I'm a professor that's going to be teaching an alt control class of some kind come this semester, which I'm really excited about. But I was wondering if you had any advice for me and for the other, faculty that might want to approach a class like this. You've already kind of touched on it, but it's like you'd say first half, like leave the fabrication aside, or what sort of any thoughts that you have, and that for those that took it as well, it'd be super helpful to know.
I think there's something worth experimenting more with alt control. Like, there's like a really fun assignment that I've actually not done in this class, which is like stick a mouse to something, which I think is just like so easy. You could like crack a mouse open and stick the optical board on whatever, and like that's an alt controller, right? And you don't need to program anything. And so there's like, you could do like week 1 assignment mouse, week 2 a button, week 3 copper tape. Like there's so many like little tiny things that aren't necessarily like a big midterm, but it gets the students like making things more, and I think that will lead to more inspiration.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Full disclosure, I never used a CNC. I just went into the room with Matt and watched him. I was like, okay, and then then I left. So, but like that isn't to say that like we were all talking about like how should this look, how should this feel, and I think maybe like we say fabrication, but and that kind of sounds like a very big word, but I think we can also start by working with like cardboard or like sticking a mouse to something, using your PS5 controller and putting something on top of it so that it looks like something else, right? I think because of our program has all of these resources, there's an emphasis on like learning this tool or trying to at least interact with it. But I think if the goal is more about like thinking about what it means to have alt controllers, or thinking about what does it mean to design for different abilities, like I feel like if you approach it from that perspective, perhaps the priorities will also be clearer.
Thank you.
So I have to ask, how many times has somebody just using the forbidden function keys 13 through 24 and just made a little controller that way?
0 times, actually. But that sounds like an idea. You should make something.
I did.
Cool.
It's just any standard button. You just have a single 2-wire switch, and those keys just exist.
Cool. The more you know.
The more you know.
Here's a suggestion for you starting out. Tell people to actually read the Windows spec for control input. I need to read syllabus first.
Cool. I think that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. You can play all of these games in the Indie Arcade downstairs. Check them out.